Artificial intelligence, everyone seems to be talking about it these days. On one hand, you've got people who can't wait to kick back and let the computers start to do all the hard work. On the other hand, you've got people who think the immediate future is going to be something like the movie The Terminator, where machines have taken over, and at best, we're their slaves. I happen to think that for a film which paints such a bleak future, The Terminator can actually teach us quite a lot of practical things about how artificial intelligence can actually help us, and in particular, how it can help us address some of healthcare's biggest challenges and opportunities. So how can artificial intelligence help? Well, first, those of you who've seen the film, let's remember what the Terminator said. My CPU is a neural network, a learning computer. Most of the time, when people say the words artificial intelligence, what they mean is machine learning. And machine learning is what we do when we teach computers to perform tasks by recognizing patterns. So rather than having to write down an exact set of rules or a known algorithm, this allows us to cope with variation, with uncertainty. The same variation and uncertainty that we cope with every day when making decisions and carrying out tasks. And neural networks, buzzword alert, are a particular kind of machine learning that are really, really good at learning patterns present in vast amounts of data, complex data like images. And when I use the word complex, I mean if you take a typical X-ray image, that can contain millions of individual pixels. So neural networks require lots of data to train, and they require a lot of computing power as well. And in the last few years, the reason people have started talking more about neural networks, machine learning, is because that computing power is more readily available, typically in the form of graphics processing units. And the reason for that is lots of people are playing computer games. Yes, like Fortnite. So how do people and how do artificial intelligence algorithms perform these tasks? Well, what we do is we learn associations between inputs, so observations, and outputs, or decisions. So for example, let's take a trivial example in healthcare. I see this pattern of pixels in an image. It represents the heart, so I'm going to apply my treatment over here. So if we can identify tasks which are currently performed by experts, work with the experts, and make these tasks autonomous, what we're really looking to do is to free up those experts to focus their skills, their expertise on more difficult challenges and problems, the kinds that really today computers, artificial intelligence can't address. So within healthcare, there exist lots of broad opportunities to use machine learning, artificial intelligence to improve the way things are today. So imagine not having to wait for a radiologist to be free to look at your scan before being referred to a different specialist. Imagine if, based on your health signs today, it was possible to spot the early onset of a disease so you could start taking the treatment now. Imagine knowing that healthcare systems across the world are under-resourced, that it would be possible to automate some of the tedious, repetitive tasks, and again, free up a skilled workforce for more value-adding activities like one-to-one interaction, face-to-face with the patient, and the personalized healthcare that could come with it. So unlike Skynet, artificial isn't ready to take over, but as you can see from this, at the moment we're collecting more data than we're training experts to deal with it. However, it does offer the opportunity to do more of what we do, but just better. So let's talk about cancer. Last year, there were 18 million people worldwide diagnosed with cancer. 9 million of those were diagnosed with a form of cancer that could be treated with radiotherapy. Only 4.5 million of those people received that treatment. So first of all, radiation therapy. It's a clinical technique where large doses of radiation are given to cancer patients to kill cancer cells and reduce tumor sizes. When I talk about radiation therapy or radiotherapy, what I mean is external beam radiotherapy, where high-energy X-ray beams are generated by a linear accelerator and fired into the body, targeting the cancer. These treatments are delivered in around 40 daily installments called fractions. And on the whole, radiotherapy is an incredibly effective form of treatment used in many cases to cure some cancers or in conjunction with other techniques like surgery. But how is it possible to achieve the goal of irradiating the tumor without damaging the healthy tissue and organs that surround it? The answer is planning. And in our case, the plan doesn't involve clothes, boots, or a motorcycle. Planning for radiation therapy involves making an image of the patient's internal anatomy, usually using an X-ray machine. And what that does is it allows the doctor to see where the cancer is and which organs and tissues need to be spared. What they then do is they draw around the image, a task which is known as contouring, and this information is then included in the plan which is fed to the linear accelerator to deliver the treatment. Now, because of the variation in cancers and patients and anatomy, contouring relies on many years of detailed clinical training. Despite that, the results are variable, they're subjective, and overall the process is incredibly time-consuming. So if we just take cancers in the head and neck as an example, in the UK alone last year, there were 12,000 people diagnosed with cancers in that region. Now, for the contouring, it takes a clinician 2.5 hours to contour the images that go into the plan for one patient. So if you add that up, that's 3.5 years in the UK on one type of cancer, just for one part of the planning process. So hugely time-consuming, and at one of the biggest cancer centres in the UK, they can't even afford to budget that time in their daily schedules. And contouring is only one part of the planning process. So experts are still the best people to be driving the treatment, but there just aren't enough of them, which means this is why 4.5 million people a year are not getting access to the treatment that they would benefit from. So we and the clinicians we work with believe there must be a better way. So where I work, we've developed what are called deep learning algorithms to train neural networks that contour in exactly the same way that the clinicians themselves would. And this goes way beyond learning, just copying the visual patterns in the data. Deep learning, what happens is you take the images and you break them down into their fundamental building blocks using what are called convolutional filters. These are mathematical operations. And what that allows the algorithms to learn are very subtle interactions between different parts of the image that aren't visible to the naked eye, almost the kind of thing that people build up as skill and instinct through their experience. The term deep learning just means there are lots and lots and lots of possible connections between the inputs, those measurements or observations, and the outputs, the decisions. And what this means is that it allows the networks to capture those subtle variations that the clinicians day in, day out are latently relying on to form their decisions. But for these patterns, these outputs to make sense clinically, the algorithm needs to learn which of those building blocks actually contribute to the final decision. And this is done by training the algorithm with examples of images and with the contours that the world's best clinicians produced for those images. And during the training, we work with the clinicians. We check that the answers make sense clinically, not just mathematically. And working with institutions across the world, we've been able to train software that we call TEDxBonnSquare. And what that does is it takes an X-ray or an MRI image and within minutes produces contours. So for those head and neck cases, it does that in about 5 minutes. So that's 30 times faster than is being done today. But just as importantly, if not more so, we've been able to show that the contours that the algorithm produces are indistinguishable from the ones that would be produced by the clinicians. We performed blinded testing, and we were able to show that clinicians preferred our algorithm, our contours in equal amounts to those that they and their colleagues produced. In fact, in some cases, because it was blinded, they actually said that the contours that they'd produced previously weren't good enough and needed to be redone. Which is an interesting result, because what it means is they're now confident delegating that part of the planning process to an algorithm. But the key point I want to make here is we're not trying to beat the clinician. What we're trying to do is take what they do already and allow them to move on to more complex tasks. And this auto-contouring approach, and other approaches like it that try to bring clinically informed artificial intelligence into healthcare are going to be vital in addressing the constraints that are present in today's healthcare systems and will improve the consistency and the volume of treatments that are performed. In the area where I work, they'll also allow more newer techniques called adaptive techniques to be available to more patients. And this is where, over those 40 days, the treatment plan is actually updated to move along with the changes in the patient's anatomy and physical presentation. But at a fundamental level, we believe that by bringing these techniques, scaling up what the clinicians can do, it will allow the clinicians today, the technology today, to reach out and impact those 4.5 million patients a year who aren't getting this kind of treatment. So, artificial intelligence is an undeniably powerful tool which enables clinicians to upgrade their abilities. So, I'm going to close by quoting from the Terminator. The future is not set. There is no fate but what we make for ourselves. Come with me if you want to live.